Young Chok just realized the brutal truth. Companies hate junior developers. All the job descriptions he finds are asking for 5 years of coding experience in a framework that has only existed for 3 years. The market is super competitive. He feels like he's in a gladiator arena where everyone is fighting for a job position. The last Godbender used to be in the same situation as Young Chok. However, he emerged victorious from this gladiator tournament because he figured out a way to stand out. You have to understand one thing. Companies don't like developers with no experience. That's just the harsh truth. And I know it because I'm a senior developer. Companies, whenever they will have a chance, they will always hire developers who have experience. Especially now in this brutal market. However, there is one type of company that still secretly hires junior developers. And that's how I got my first job out of college. I got a job at a company that was asking for 4 years of experience. Even though I was straight out of college and I got none. And I still got the job. But more on that later. First, what you need to understand is why do companies don't like junior developers? Why they don't hire juniors anymore? There's multiple factors, multiple elements in this equation that you need to understand. The first thing is juniors are actually expensive. Not just because of the salary, that's one thing. But the other element is that companies, they invest when they hire someone. It's like an investment they're doing. They invest money, the salary, and they invest time. And time is also money. And a junior developer who doesn't know how to code at a professional level yet, it's a big investment in terms of time that the company needs to give. Different people in the company needs to coach this person to be at the level where they can contribute actively to the company. And think about it like for yourself. Imagine you have a few months of coding experience. Maybe you went through a boot camp. Maybe you went to college. You have like a few classes. Think about this. If a company would hire you today, what could you do? In the first day, how much would you contribute? In the first week, in the first month? What kind of value can you bring to a company? And think about this very objectively, in a very honest way. Try to think about it, because this is going to help you a lot if you try to realize this. Because companies, they think the exact same way. They're going to think, okay, this guy that is standing in front of us, why would we hire him? Like, what kind of value will he bring to us? That's the main thing. And if you cannot bring value for the first 6 months, because the first 6 months of you entering the job, you're just learning, that's not gonna work. You could of course complain about the education system, why things are the way they are, why companies are like this, but it's not gonna help you. The situation is the way it is right now. You need to figure out a way to solve the problem that you have. But this is the first element in the equation that you're trying to solve, right? That's one element. Companies don't like juniors because it's expensive. The other thing that you need to realize is right now, because of how easy it is to apply for jobs and because of the state of the market today, people apply in masses to like hundreds of companies. So companies are actually inundated with job applicants, and that of course they're gonna raise the standards, right? Because people apply right now to hundreds of companies. They don't apply to like 10 or 20 companies anymore. People apply literally to hundreds of companies. Maybe you watching this, maybe you already applied to 100 companies. Maybe you have friends who apply to more than a few hundred companies, right? You probably know at least someone who applied to 100 companies. I know people who apply to thousands of companies. Like, we're not even talking about hundreds. Thousands of companies. Thousands. 4 digits. Which is kind of crazy. So naturally, companies receive all those applicants and they're gonna choose the best one, and they're gonna also raise the bar, because if you get so many applicants, for sure some are gonna be more experienced than you. It's straight up competition and they select the best one. That's just the way it is. That's the second element in this equation. The next element is one that you should be aware of, is the massive tech layoffs that happened the past 2 years. We're not talking about like a few hundred people that were laid off. We're talking about a few 100,000 people, 1,000 software engineers who were laid off from tech companies, which is massive. Because you have to think about, where are all those people now? What are they doing? Most likely they're actively looking for a job. Either they already found something or they're actively looking for a job. And if they're actively looking for a job, they're competing with you. Like, you're competing with those guys. And usually those guys that actually already have experience since they worked for companies. Either they were junior developers who got laid off, but it's like juniors who already have some experience. Either it's mid-level engineers, either it's senior software engineers. So those companies, what you also have to think about is, if they laid off those people, when they start hiring again, they're not going to hire juniors with no experience. Of course, if they laid off like mid-level engineers, senior engineers, those they're going to hire again are going to be of that level, at least people who can contribute and who already have some level of experience, right? It's again because it's all about bringing value. Those people, they can literally bring more value to the company, which means more money to the company, which means that for the company, it's a smart investment. It's like a safe investment to do. If you have to put your money somewhere, would you put it in someone who has no experience, or would you put it in someone who has experience, who have proven that they can provide value? It's just all about that. It's very basic. But naturally, it makes it very complicated, right? Like, all those 3 elements of the equation makes it very complicated. There's also another thing that people rarely talk about. It's a little bit more shady. It's some companies, what you have to realize is in the hiring process, there are a lot of politics. There's politics in the sense that companies are required by law to not discriminate candidates, right? Based on gender, race, like homosexuality and all those things, right? Like all those quotas and stuff like that. But the problem is companies, they still want to hire whoever they want to hire, right? Like you don't want to be limited to just because of those quotas and rules. Like you don't want to be forced, or you don't want to get into troubles if you hire someone and then someone like complains and then you have a lawsuit and basically you get into a lot of troubles. So what they do is they put a long list of requirements of what you need, and naturally no one really fits perfectly those requirements. And because of that, they can justify it. They can say, oh, like, but this person didn't really fit like some of the requirements that we had, and this person was just subjectively a better match for us, and that's why we pick this person. So it's kind of like a safety mechanism as well against like those laws. I'm not saying that every company does it, but it's practiced by some companies. The other thing that is a little bit shady that people usually don't talk about is some companies, what they do is they put job applications that are actually fake. It's not real. They're never going to fill this position that they have. And they do it for a wide variety of reasons. One is they could do to measure like the interest in this position in the company. The other thing they can do is just for the public image, right? They want to show maybe to their investors that they're actively looking for people to hire or something like this. The other one can be literally to capture data, right? About applicants, they just capture resumes and then who knows what they do with this data. But it's practiced, right? Like not everyone does it. It's not the practice that every company do it. Like don't start to become paranoid about those things. It's just something that does happen. So you can just be aware of it. But either way, all of this for you is just elements of the equation that you need to understand. Don't get too like obsessed and paranoid with this and start like, thinking that everything is over and like everyone is against you and there's like a big conspiracy theory or something like that. It's not the case. There are ways to get to high paying tech jobs, and this is what we're going to cover right now. Because what you need to think is there's always two steps. There's always two ways a cut bender thinks. One is you need to analyze the market and understand what is the state of things. And two is you need to understand what are you supposed to do to get to the best opportunities that are available. And if you think about the market, right? Because I said there is one type of company that still hires junior developers, right? That still is a way that you can get to those high-paying tech jobs. I'm going to give you, just in a few minutes, I'm going to reveal which type of company it is. But I want you to think for yourself first for a little bit, just to train your analytic skills. You're looking at the market today, right? We covered a few of the dynamics that are happening right now. You look at the market and you're trying to think, all right, if I was a company right now and I was hiring people, which is a type of company that is in pain right now? So you try to think about this. Which is a company that is in pain because they try to grow. They need to grow very fast. They needed to hire people already yesterday because they have so much work that they need to do. They don't have enough people to do all this work. They need to grow fast. They have some level of pressure, either external or internal, because of something. Like, which is the type of company that would actually fit this description? A company that is very flexible and dynamic. Naturally, for me, I would directly think about startups, right? Startups are the type of companies that have to move fast. They have to grow. They are a threat of essentially dying or being replaced or being like they fear like competition, for example. And they need to hire people yesterday because they have way too much work for the amount of people that they have. But there's a little twist to it because you always want to go with the companies that are in the highest pain. It's kind of like doing business, right? Like if you sell, there's like this interesting analogy that Alex Hormozy once mentioned. I think it was a professor at like some university. He asked his students if they could have a hot dog stand and they could be selling hot dogs and they could have one competitive advantage compared to their competition, what they would choose. And students would mention different things like better marketing, tastier hot dogs, and better like location and things like this. And the teacher smiled and he said, actually, it's none of those things. What you would want is a starving crowd. Because if you have a starving crowd in front of you, if you are located in a place where, I don't know, like there was a game, for example, like a football game or something, and then there you have a crowd of people who are coming out of this game and they're all starving, they're hungry, they want food, it doesn't matter your branding, it doesn't matter your price, it doesn't matter the quality of your hot dogs. You have a starving crowd in front of you, they're just literally gonna buy from you. And you can think of this analogy for the tech market as well. If you have a company in front of you who is starving, who needs to hire people yesterday, they need to move fast, their requirements are gonna be very different. And for you, if you can find those types of companies, you can position yourself perfectly to match them, understand their needs, and be the solution for it. That's jackpot. So now that we have identified those companies, you need to realize, how do you get to those opportunities, right? How do you get them to hire you? And how can you open more opportunities for yourself? There are two main things that you need to do. Always. Number one, you might not think about it, but you need to pray to God. And I don't mean this in a dramatic way, like it's the end of the world, you need to pray, fall on your knees, start crying because the tech market is so rough. It's not what I mean. You always, throughout your life, you always need to rely on God. You always pray, you make dua, and you ask God to guide you to the straight path and to bring you more success. That's something that you do throughout your life. You don't do it just for interviews, by the way, like just to get your first job. You do it throughout your life to be in a successful state. That's something that you always want to keep, and you never forget this. Always keep this as like a pillar of your life. But the next thing you have to do in parallel to that, you also need to work. Right? You cannot just pray and do nothing and expect things will fall on you. You need to do work in parallel, because it's like, I don't know, like for example, some people, they like to just pray and then they're like, oh, like my duas were not answered. But what's interesting is like there is an etiquette actually. When you ask God for something, there is an etiquette. It's like if I give you a simple analogy, even like between humans, imagine if someone would go and ask money from Elon Musk. Like they would ask for $10,000 from Elon Musk, for example. And imagine if this guy, all he does all day is party, drink, eat, like play video games, watch anime. That's all. And he just needs those money, those $10,000 just to party more, like pay his rent, food, and just like to just party more. Basically, that's it. Obviously, like, do you think Elon Musk would want to donate to someone like this? Like, would it be a smart investment out of all the things that he can do? Would that be a smart investment to do? No, because it's actually even straight up disrespectful of this guy to ask it, right? Because it's like there's an etiquette when you ask someone. You need to try, you need to do work, because you need to deserve to receive this. You do two things in parallel, right? Like you pray and you work hard. But there's multiple types of work, right? Because working, there's a lot of things that you can do. So now we're gonna try to see what is smart work that you can do. And again, you need to remember the formula we're discussing, right? We discussed about the market, we discussed about your opportunity. You need to think about all those dimensions. And this way you can determine what is it that you need to do to win. It's like you have multiple dimensions of a video game, right? And you need to figure out which is all the right moves that you need to do to win the game. And it's very similar here. When you know that the market is hyper competitive, it's extremely hard to stand out. When you know this, what you need to realize is the only way to win in a crowded competitive market is to stand out. Coding fundamentally is the art of problem solving in order to provide value. Code is a tool that you use to solve problems, to provide value. The more value you can bring, the more problems you can solve, the more valuable you become for a company. It's literally this. This is why I asked you at the beginning, if you were to join a company today, what kind of problems can you solve for the company? What kind of value can you provide? You need to really realize this. You need to think for yourself. If I ask you this question, you need to be able to answer it, because this is exactly what a company is going to be thinking. When they read your resume, when they look through your profile, when they interview you, they're going to think, okay, this guy that we have here, what kind of problems can he solve for us? What kind of value can he bring? We're going to pay him a very high salary to be a software engineer in our company. What kind of problems can he solve? And the more you increase your technical skills, the more you build code. And you have to realize this, like code is really a tool to solve problems in order to provide value. But the end goal is to provide value. That's the end goal of this. So you need to realize what kind of value can you provide. The best way that I know of course, you can take courses online, you can read books. There's a wide variety of ways to increase your technical skills. In my opinion, one of the most effective way, if we consider return on investment, is to work on cool projects. You work on very exciting, interesting projects that you build. Don't just build some stupid projects like a weather app or a to-do list app. Don't limit yourself to that, because this has no value, literally, like barely any value today. What has value though is if you work on projects that actually solve a problem, right? A project that maybe solve one problem in your own personal life, that you have some story around that you can tell also. That always makes it more interesting. If you contribute to open source projects, also that's one way to go higher, right? Like you go higher down the line. This way you solve more problems, because when you work on an open source project, you're going to collaborate with other people. It's a more massive scale project, and you're going to learn a lot of things. You're going to learn how to solve different types of problems and how to provide more value. Also, if you take one of your projects and you turn it into a startup, even if the startup is not successful, but still the fact that you went ahead, you deployed it, you tried to get users, try to scale it, you collaborate with people, that is going to teach you a lot of things, and that's going to really help your problem solving skills to grow. So that's one way to increase your skill set, right? But the other thing that you want to do in parallel to that, you always want to increase your skill set, but then you want people to see that you have increased your skill set, right? You don't want to just work in the dark and then just, again, submit your resume like everyone else is doing and then being in this pile of applicants. You don't want that. What you want is you want to build things, you want to increase your skills, and you want people to see it as soon as you increase your skills. And the way you do it is you share. You share on Twitter, you share on LinkedIn. You get people to see it. You share everything that you learn, things that you're building, work in progress, demos that you have done. You share all of this, because this is what is going to make you stand out from the pool of applicants that a company will receive. Because people are going to notice you, engineers, managers, recruiters, they're going to notice you on these platforms. And a lot of opportunities are going to happen through purely this. I know a guy like this who he dropped out of high school. He didn't have any qualifications, no boot camp, nothing, no college degree. Straight up dropped out of high school. And he found his first six-figure job because he was very active online. He was building in public. He was working on different projects. He was publicizing it. He was involved in different communities in tech, like programming communities. And he got noticed like this. And when he was looking actively for a job, he made a post. A few people retweeted his tweet. He got noticed like this and he got a job. That's how things happen. And that's how you stand out in the market. This is like an overview of a strategy that you can use. I go a lot more in depth into this in this other video that I have right here. Is going to pop here on the side. It's a 40-minute free guide. I spent a long time doing this. It has like truly like a step-by-step plan on how to get a high-paying job in this brutal tech market that we're in today.